Jan Markell is with us. You probably heard her on the podcast or on YouTube or whatnot, and her conferences that she puts on. And you probably visited her website, Olive Tree. It's Olive Tree Views.org. I get confused with the Understanding the Times. As you know, she has in the fall the Understanding the Times conference. That's one of the largest prophecy conferences in North America. And she has that, great speakers all the time. And then, of course, you hear her radio program, Olive Tree News.org. And so you can listen to that, too. So I listen every week to her and her guests, and maybe some of you do, too. If you're not, you need to tune in, man. We talk about the remnant a lot, right? We talk about the remnant is small. And so we get a blessing today of having one of the remnant leaders in prophecy and connecting dots and whatnot. And like I've told you before, think about this. 98% of the churches in America don't teach prophecy anymore. They've totally eliminated it. So the remnant has about 2% that actually still continues to teach it and make their people aware of the signs of the times. Well, Jan is one of those people. She makes us aware of the signs of the times. She's doing heavy research on things. She has a lot of featured guests, and so we are fortunate to get Jan. She's getting ready to do a proximity conference down south that they're going to do. Hopefully you guys can make it down there if you can go have some time. I think it'd be great. But she's here, and she says she's going to be in the area, and would we like to have her? And I said, of course we would like to have you. Come on in, man. It'd be great to have you. Our people would be delighted. So she made her plans, and she came here today. So we are blessed to have Jan Markell with us. Give her a round of applause. Welcome her to Rock Harbor. Great having you from Minnesota.
Yeah,
all the way.
Yes, minus 2 degrees when I left, and I got here, and it's about minus 2 degrees. So, I tell you, I thought I was coming to paradise, and I've been cold for 3 days. Okay, I get my technology in line here, and just make a couple of opening comments, and the water in place here. And Pastor Brandon and I went back and forth on topic and issues of the day, which you already got a nice dose of issues of the day through Randy Thomas and what Prophecy Update does. And I'll be here Wednesday night, and we're going to get a lot more heavily into, I'm going to reference current events today, but that's probably not going to be my kind of focus like a laser beam topic. I'll weave it in at the end, but what I really want to do, because I hear from so many, hundreds and over time thousands, and meet some of you here, and you feel so alone, and that's kind of what I want to look at for a few minutes this morning. And again, I mean, I've been in ministry a lot of years, and certainly in the last 20, I mean, since you start getting in an electronic audience and all the, I'm going to read 2 or 3 emails here, and you pretty soon you pick up the sort of the tone of our times, at least in the church. The tone of our times in the world is beyond abysmal. It's just frightening. But in the church, it's kind of, it's a little on the discouraging side. I'm going to, a couple of emails here, and I think maybe these will sort of set the stage here and a little bit more about what I want to talk about. These folks, I don't even know them, but when they write and I say, may I read this? And they generally say, of course. So Janet writes this. She says, some days I simply want to talk to a knowledgeable Christian about what is going on in the world today and how it lines up with the Bible. I seldom find anyone willing to talk about issues of the day, or certainly not the soon coming of the Lord. And then she says, whatever, it's putting people to sleep, apparently. It seems there is so much more holding the attention of the saints of God that whatever that is putting people into a slumber, as I know you know that from how you associate with people. And she says, something very dangerous is happening in the church. She says, I can't put my finger on it. I'm very concerned about the direction we are heading. The last days are marked by apostasy, and the church seems to be caught in that net right now. And then another email or two here, and this one is from Kate, and she says, what about those of us who cannot find a church in our town? And she says, believe me, I've been to just about everything except Mormon and Jehovah's Witnesses. I know that the Bible says not to forsake the gathering together as some do, but what if you have tried almost every single church in your town and come away empty-handed and heartsick? The Word of God is exciting and fills me like nothing else. For fun, I listen to my favorite teachers, and now that I have the internet, I'm constantly listening and absorbing anything solid. And then she says, my acquaintances think I am kind of nuts, and I'm okay with that. Then one more. Yeah, and I, again, could read dozens to hundreds here. And this is from South Africa. So if you think things might be better other places, they're actually worse. But South Africa, Suzette says, let's see, this was a few months ago. Jan, I want to reiterate what so many other people have said to you. It's as if my circle of friends who used to get excited about things going on in the world, about eschatology, about events in Israel, those people, it's getting smaller and smaller, and it's getting more and more lonely out here. So this is global. I think sometimes the Western world thinks, and certainly Europe, Europe sadly threw God out 50, 60 years ago. And you talk about a remnant group of believers in Europe. They're out there, but they're meeting in small churches and in homes, and maybe that's the fate of the American church as well. So what I kind of put my thinking cap on, and my mother used to work in fabric, and she's a fabric expert. And she used to come home all the time, and she'd talk to me about remnant cloth. So I kind of starting to learn about what remnant fabric was. And I learned through her that it was made from mismatched material. It was kind of all tossed aside. Nobody wanted these little patches of clothing or of material, until somebody came along and wanted it to make a beautiful quilt. And then the remnant became a beautiful creation. So I hope we can keep our focus that though some of you, not all of you, some of you feel alone, you feel like you probably are this mismatched remnant, I want to speak to you for a few minutes. And then as we wind down, I want to just bring in to some current things that are going on in the world. And again, Wednesday we'll focus more on the current events than we are today. So, remnant believers, they often feel isolated, misunderstood, even though they have the truth, and the naysayers are clueless. Have you noticed that? You may have the truth. I know you do. I don't think you'd be in this church if you didn't have the truth and long for the truth and want to study and learn the truth. And you go to those that you care about, and they are truly clueless. They are going to make fun of you. The enthusiastic remnant believers will travel across town or across the country to attend events that present information about which the church is silent. Emphasis on information about which the church is silent. In 2016 and 2017, and I've been having what I call Understanding the Times conferences since 2002. And we've always had very good attendance. The first event was like 1,500, and then it just grew and grew and grew. So in 2016, and admittedly that was like 2 weeks before our 2016 election, and that certainly and folks were nervous that fall. And my venue holds 4,300. We had 6,300 people turn out. And fortunately, there were overflow rooms that all had some sort of screen, so everybody was able to hear the conference. And this folks come from like 45, 46. They come from almost every state, and many Canadian provinces and some foreign countries. The next year, 2017, we had the same situation. It was just completely, we were a fire hazard. And the church said enough. The church said enough. You've got to limit your attendance and ticket the event. I'm bringing that in only to emphasize this point, that these enthusiastic type remnant believers are going to travel across town, across country, to be together and to learn the truth. Very often these believers approach their church leadership to talk to them about the things that we're interested in, but most often they are shut out. I don't know what's going on with church leadership today. I talk about it on air a bit. There's certainly church growth that is about the primary focus of most churches today. It's big church, big bands, etc., and it's not to understand the deeper things that particularly these emailers were writing about, that they want to learn about. Okay, when a remnant believer finds someone who is kindred spirit, it is like discovering a gold mine. Have you ever had that experience? You find someone that cares like you do or is interested like you do, and that often happens at my conference. And again, they come from every imaginable destination, but they're friends for life because they can talk about things that matter while much of the world and much of the church is talking about things that really don't matter. Remnant believers have offended friends and family simply by telling them the truth of our times or for sharing information that is relevant to our times. This will often bring on mocking and scoffing. At the least, it results in irritated indifference. And I'm sure you've all experienced either the mocking and the scoffing or the irritated indifference. I have never figured out, nor will I ever figure out, why God just puts a hunger in the hearts of some to learn the deeper truths, and others are content with, let's just be blunt here, feel good. I don't understand that. It's probably been a process in society for the last 40, 50 years. But whatever, it's been effective, and it's certainly satanic. We know that because this is not what the Lord would have. The Lord would have his church be filled with, the people interested in not the 2%, but the 2% growing to the 98%. Okay, here's just some rules I came up with for survival. How do we survive in these last days? Just a few bullet points, and don't be ignorant of our times and don't retreat or unplug. Let me just say a word about that because I'm talking to people who are unplugging, and it is tempting. It's tempting to unplug when we see the catastrophes going on around the world, but the minute we stop becoming informed, the minute we stop trying to understand the times, remember the sons of Issachar were men who understood the times. I know God wants us to understand the times, and we can't if we're going to shut off all the media and turn off the internet and stop trying to understand what in the world is going on. So I know he wants us to, and rather be alert, be watchful, prayerful, and be in tune with what is happening. Now, let's see. Expect to be mocked. I mean, the Bible says it's going to happen, 2 Peter 3. You're going to be mocked for your belief system. And if you're believing, let's just say, in the theologies like any minute return of the Lord, you're going to be doubly mocked. You're going to be scoffed at. It's a biblical guarantee. Watchmen will be seen as troublemakers. I've been trying to I air on 900 radio stations, almost 900 around the U.S. and Canada. And I've been trying to air on the major, because I operate out of the Twin Cities Christian Network for 20 years. And I have a radio rep in New Jersey, and he goes to them and he says, "Isn't it time for you to air Understanding the Times radio?" And they say to him, "Jan's nothing but a troublemaker." Well, the truth, I guess, is troublesome. So watchmen are going to be seen as troublemakers. And it's heartbreaking because by them having that perception, it's a false perception, having that perception, they're denying their audience, I think, some information that would be helpful as they try to understand the times, which are getting more and more difficult to understand. And you will feel alone. You just might as well accept it. You will feel alone in this world. If you have a small circle church, that's great. And here's just some things I think we need to avoid. We need to avoid in trying to understand our times. We really need to stick to the Bible. Now, there are a lot of trendy things that come along. I think that's the next bullet point here. There are new theologies that come along. There are trends. There was September 23rd back in 2017. September 23rd, I don't know, was the world coming to an end that day? Something was supposed to happen that tens of thousands of people were counting down to September 23rd as a significant day. Perhaps they anticipated the rapture. All I'm saying is let's avoid these kinds of things. If we can stick to the Bible and avoid these new theologies and these trendy signs, I think we're going to be a lot more productive remnant believers. We need to avoid ideas that go beyond the Bible. They're out there. They're way too prominent today. And we need to avoid the sensational. I live a lot on YouTube, and I notice that whatever is sensational is getting tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands. This is what people are gravitating to. They love the sensational. The more kooky sounding it is, that's what people are gravitating. This is tragic. We don't need to gravitate to things like that when we've got solid biblical teaching and solid current event type updates going on. And we need to particularly run from date setting as it concerns end time events, as it concerns the return of the Lord. I know Hal Lindsey, not well, but I brought him to the Twin Cities twice, and he told me privately, he said this isn't a private comment, but he said, because I think he said it publicly, way back, he told people to, back when he was writing Late Great Planet, which would have been, it came out, I think, in 1970. He said, keep your eye on 1988. In other words, 40 years from 48 to 88 is 40 years of, that's really significant. He just says, he said, Jan, I never set the date. I just said people should keep their eye on 1988. And he said, that's the biggest mistake I ever made in my entire life, because it came too close to date setting. Because then when those dates come along and nothing happens, then we all have egg on our face. All right, understand that the last days, well, the last days church, it's not going to understand you, but probably. Just not going to understand you. It may not support the things that interest you. I think we've already talked about that. 98% of the church will not deal with the glorious news that the King is coming, perhaps today. They don't care. It might not grow the church. The last days church will focus on your best life now. The last days church is pretty much a Joel Osteen type church. It's going to major in minors. It's going to be focused on health and wealth. It won't understand why some want to leave this world. You have loved ones who don't get it, why you want heaven as your home. Today is fine, okay? They don't get that. They want to cling to this earth for some reason. So just understand that some don't understand why some do want their heavenly home, and soon. And the modern day church is more interested in conforming than in transforming. Now, sadly, I know more people than ever who are just, they've given up. And I'm speaking, again, this is around the country, they've given up. As I read here, tried every church in town, and I sometimes I'll write back, I said, are you looking for perfection? You know, you're never going to find the perfect church. You're not going to find it. They say, no, not looking for perfection, but looking for, A, B, C, and D. Can't find that, and sort of a hostile attitude towards the things I believe, which would be the truth. So it's more interested in conforming than in transforming. Now, I believe we cannot survive alone. And I just recommend that if you can't find a church, there are some options. I say they're not good options, but they're better than nothing. And I think many here have found a church, and you folks, please thank the Lord for that. But you still need to seek out the like-minded somewhere. You got to find it somewhere, or the isolation will certainly drive you nearly out of your mind. Maybe it's a Bible study. Maybe that small group that like-minded is a weekly get-together with friends, study the Bible, study current events. How do the current events tie to the Bible? If you can't find it in your church, maybe you need to start one yourself. An online group, lots of that going on. Lots of that going on today. And we must be built up in the faith, and we must build up others in the faith. Because the scripture is clear, Hebrews 10, encourage one another. Encourage one another. I think that is such an important verse, particularly if you're watching the times, because watching the times will drag you down. We must be built up in the faith. And just plain be built up. So let's rejoice that the prophets of old longed to see our generation. They did. The prophets of old longed to see the last days. I believe we're in the last days. I believe we're in the last hour, okay? I think the Lord's return is so imminent, it could be before this message is finished, and maybe some of you are saying, yeah, that'd be a good idea. But yeah, I mean, it's any day. It's perhaps today. It's imminent. Imminent means any minute. And I just believe that if the prophets of old longed to see our generation, we can put up with some of the nonsense that we have to put up with to be a part of this generation. It is a privilege, and it's a challenge to be born for such a time as this. I'm going to say that again. It's a privilege and a challenge to be born for such a time as this. This wonderful communication ability, instant communication, technology. Oh, it has an evil side, of course. But do you know that in a click of a mouse, the gospel is given to the ends of the earth? In literally a click of a mouse, the gospel goes around the world. That's the good side of technology. So it has its very constructive and upbuilding side. We are privileged to have a front row seat and to understand the times and what may be the final generation. And I often ask, why are some so privileged to, I'm going to word this carefully, to be able to see a little more deeply into what's happening than the average person? I don't understand that. I'm probably talking to many today who do see a little more deeply into things that are happening. Why you? Why me? I don't know. But it's a privilege and a challenge, both. I think you would agree with me. Encourage the flock, and you will be encouraged. Nothing encourages me like encouraging somebody else. It's just, again, it goes back to Hebrews 10:25. And what's the rest of that? It's all the more as you see the day approaching. All the more as things get kind of more and more tough. Encourage all the more. Why don't you make a mental note right now that before you leave the building today, you would encourage at least one person. Just, tell them they've done a good job or something. It will make their day, it will make your day. Encourage Pastor Brandon. I guarantee you pastors need it more than you can believe. Ministry leaders do too. All right, just some reminders here. God has everything under control. I tell you, we've come through a week. We've got, my understanding is impeachment next week. These are grim things to have to keep focusing on. I don't want to see one more story. Pray for Australia, folks. Australia is a picture of what the tribulation is going to be. If you haven't seen it, it's maybe just as well. But pray for those believers. Pray for everyone. There was a wonderful story. I posted it to my website a couple days ago. Prayer as the fire was coming to wipe out not only a bunch of people on the beach, but a town in the path. A former atheist, now a Christian, began praying and speaking to God, turn the flames, turn the wind, turn the wind. He didn't have the faith to believe it. God turned the wind, and everything went in the other direction. Everybody was spared. So God does have everything under control. We'll never understand his ways, never. But things are lining up as prophesied. He said, the Bible says in 2 Timothy 3, this generation will be perilous. This is the perilous times that we're in. The final generation is perilous. We've got the Iranians. We've got things around the world. We've got the North Koreans. We've got atomic bombs can be dropped on somebody at any minute. Israel is being threatened as we speak. We're being threatened as we speak. So, but things are lining up exactly as the Bible prophesied. There's the reprobate mind thinking, just as prophesied. The perilous times, just as prophesied. We're a privileged generation, but it's tough to watch. God is allowing things to happen because the stage is being set. And the closer we get to the end of the end, the more that stage is being set. I think it's about finally set. I think the curtain's going to go up. The curtain's called the rapture of the church. And I think it's about to go up. But the stage is being set for that to happen any day, any minute. Now I'm starting to say any hour. Any hour. Some reminders, some of them are tough. You will be shocked by what you read, watch, and hear. I have one friend who said to me, this is a few months ago, Jan, and I referred to this in a few opening comments, I'm turning everything off, I'm done. Not only am I turning it off, I'm going to stop talking about it to people. I'm not going to talk about things that are going on. She said, I give up. I give up. I said, don't do that. I said, if you don't tell them, who will? Maybe nobody else will. But it's tempting to drop out, tune out, and because we're being shocked by what we read, see, and hear, the depravity, the evil. I could give you a whole message. I could give you a 3-hour message on how evil is escalating. That's not my intent, and it's too dark and depressing. But it's shocking, and somehow we've got to cope with it and contend with it and turn around and shine the light on the things God is doing, off the evil. Satan is getting more active and stirring everything up. You know, there came a book out, and we can talk more about this on Wednesday, and I'll even show you pictures, but a book came out in 2019. It's called The Children's Book of Demons. And it's a book teaching little 5- and 6-year-olds how to conjure demons. And, I mean, this is tragic. I mean, again, last days, 2 Timothy 3, the last days, evil will wax worse and worse. But educating little 5-year-olds how to conjure up demons, Satan is overactive. Satan is so absolutely on overdrive, trying to stir things up and trying to, well, exponentially grow his empire. He's doing a pretty good job. That's why we have to push back. We have to. We have to be salt and light and delay the decay. If we don't, who will? Who will? This is why the tribulation is going to be as dark as it will be. The church isn't there. Right now, the church puts a lid on evil. Evil can go only so far. You saw that picture here on the video of Satan on top of a Bible. It went by quickly, but I read the story online. So again, we have to push back. We just have to. We have to be salt and light and delay the decay because Satan is stirring everything up and things will grow darker. We must shine brighter. We just must. So those are just some reminders. Let's see here. Resist being disillusioned. I talked to even few I've talked to this morning. You may not be disillusioned, but you're discouraged. You're discouraged about various things. Well, you got a lot of people who feel the same way, but try to resist being disillusioned. Try to resist being terribly discouraged. Many expected, if we're looking for the Lord's return, many expected it 20, 30, 40 years ago. And we're still waiting. Those of us who are prophecy watchers, we're still waiting. Again, I think it could be any day, any minute. I do. God has his reasons for delaying the return of the Lord in what's known as the rapture of the church. He's got his reasons. I believe it's that more would come to faith. There's just probably many, many reasons. Once we get to heaven, we'll sit down before the Lord and he will outline all of our questions will be answered. I cannot wait because I have a list this long. But why delay? Why didn't you come even before World War II? Or why didn't you come? Well, he has his reasons. And we cannot retreat or be silent. Please don't. And if we don't share the truth, the blood is on our hands. I want to give you a verse, and it's Ezekiel 33:6. And I guess if you remember nothing else this morning, I hope you'll remember this verse. It's so important. Even if you don't consider yourself a watchman, because this is really directed at watchmen. Ezekiel 33:6, but if the watchman sees the sword coming and does not blow the trumpet, and the people are not warned, and the sword comes and takes the person from them, he is taken away in his iniquity, but his blood I will require from the watchman's hand. So, if you have the truth, and you have something that should be shared, a warning, and you don't share it, and something happens, the blood's on your hands. Now, that is an ominous warning, and I take it very seriously. It's why I'm outspoken. It's why your pastor's outspoken. It's why a lot of people you know and follow are outspoken, because we don't want the blood on our hands. We want to tell the truth. We want to send the warning. I was listening to a YouTube yesterday. I'm not going to go into the specifics of it, but the teacher on the YouTube was naming every false teacher who should have been named in the context of that message. Every single name was named in that teaching. And I said, and this happens to be in ministry, I don't even follow because I don't agree really with a lot of their theology, but I gave them credit for having the courage to outrage thousands and thousands and thousands of people for naming, and every name that was named was truly, it wasn't just some borderline person. I mean, it was a true false teacher, and every name was named. I think you've got to do it. Now, there's a price to pay when you do things like that, believe me. There's a price to pay. You even got to have security in your church when you start doing things like that. You know, it's just, you have security at my conferences. My conferences next to church rent for the building, security is our next biggest expense because we've got people up there telling the truth. And of course, some of them, one is a Christian Arab and one is a Christian Jew, and others are controversial speakers for other reasons, but you know, this is a dangerous time that we live in. So that I think, and remember that the remnant church, now, I don't know what time period exactly Jesus was talking about here, but he says, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth? I don't know if that's tribulation or last days, but whatever. The true church is going to be small. Will he find faith on earth? So probably not a lot. And then I hope you'll look forward to your crowns. If you're discouraged today, for one thing, if you're longing for his appearing, a crown is promised to you. And that's 2 Timothy 4:8. Laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have loved his appearing. So I hear people say all the time, I'm going to get to heaven, I'm not going to have any crowns because I've really messed up everything. No, that's not true. And if you love for his return, if you're looking for his return, you get a crown for that, if nothing else. Okay, keep your eye on the prize. We must look beyond the world's present system. If we're going to just focus on the values of today, yeah, we will be very, very discouraged. In the end, we win. Hallelujah. In the end, we do win. And encourage one another. Again, I've said that now 3 times this morning. the importance of encouraging one another. I don't believe we can make it a week without being encouraged. When I get an encouraging email, well, first of all, I almost faint, as I'm usually being scolded. So when I get an encouraging one or an encouraging letter, now, seriously, I do get them, but they make my day. Not because I'm looking for appreciation or glory, I'm not. But to know I'm doing something right is so encouraging because, you finish a radio program, the pastor finishes a message. Boy, did I blow that one. I could have done so much better. Don't take that personally, Brent. But then somebody comes along and says, man, that was the word I needed today. And suddenly, it is such a comfort to know you heard the word of the Lord. Okay, I want to touch on some current events real briefly. Again, we'll talk more about it on Wednesday. And what I'm doing at Proximity, which is 2 weeks from yesterday, held at Calvary Chapel, East Anaheim, sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Tustin. I'm doing kind of a review of the last year. It's really probably the last year or 2 years, and certainly what we can look forward to in 2020. And so I've come up with 10 signs. Believe me, I could come up with 110, 210 that are really significant right now. And I've got video I'm going to play to illustrate some of these points, and we can get into some of that again Wednesday. I think that's 6:30 at another location. So I think the 10 primary signs, and I'm just going to refer to them because I want you to watch for them. And one would be the stirring up of the spirit of the Antichrist. Now, that even hit the heartland. I'm from the Twin Cities, and that is the heartland. And it's an interesting place to live. We have a very large Islamic population. And then we have, I didn't think we had Antifa. So President Trump came in October to our big Target Center. And sure enough, and we had, I don't know, I wasn't there, but I had a lot of people I know there. It was a wonderful evening. But sure enough, outside was complete bedlam. It's like this, I could name you right now 20, 30 countries that are in complete bedlam. All over the world. In some cases, bedlam for a good, the Iranians, that's countries in turmoil because those people want to be free. Same with in Hong Kong, but nonetheless, in other parts of the world, it's just chaos because I believe the spirit of Antichrist is so alive, so completely almost out of control right now, and that's just going to get worse. So I believe that's not necessarily in this order, but that's one of the top things that has come along in the last year, and I didn't expect to see it in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I really didn't. I mean, that's where the Billy Graham organization used to headquarter. It's not flyover country, but it's nonetheless, it's right in the heart of the country, and it's church on every corner, literally. So it came to my hometown, and our downtown was completely wrecked, parts of it anyway. The rioters even went after the police horses. I mean, they don't care. They just want to destroy. That's the spirit of Antichrist. Because Antichrist is on the horizon. Number 2 is, for our times, and not necessarily in this order, but I think this is perhaps almost the most important, is this God rejection, which results in strong delusion, in this Romans 1 behavior, and in hating God. And I've got some video clips, and I'll try to even show those perhaps Wednesday night. But how else do you explain a drag queen story hour, some things that are going on culturally, the whole trans movement? Person doesn't know if they're male or female. In fact, there are far more than just 2, male and female. There are hundreds of sexes. All right. What are you reading that I'm reading? Because I don't think so, but they believe it. They believe it. They will go to their death believing the lies, the strong delusion, the depraved mind, calling evil good, calling good evil. I have never seen it like I have in the last 3 to 5 years. Never seen it, and even in the last 1 year. It is out of control. So when you reject God, these things happen. The strong delusion, the Romans 1 mentality. And we've been rejecting, as I said, Europe threw God out 50, 60 years ago. America is going right in the shadow of Europe, exactly the same way, throwing God out bit by bit by bit by bit by bit. We don't want you. We don't need you. There are consequences to that. And so this is what you get. You get strong delusions. You get the depraved mindset. And you start hating God. Really tragic. Again, it's a privilege and a challenge to be born for such a time as this. Number 3, the rise of the new world religion, the one world religion. This is a whole message, and I'm going to say something here, and I want you to hear me correctly. And that is, I believe that this keyword, rabid environmentalism, plays a role in this one world religion. I'm for taking care of nature. I cry anytime I see anything happening to nature, but this rabid environmentalism, Greta Thunberg, Person of the Year, Time magazine. Out of 7 billion people, Time magazine focuses on Greta Thunberg, 16, 17-year-old girl who says the climate's going to melt the world in 12 years, 10 years. And we're ruining her future because everything's going to go up in smoke. It's the Times Person of the Year. Not a president or, a foreign leader or Benjamin Netanyahu. No, Greta Thunberg, who had a temper tantrum at the United Nations last September. Unfortunately, Donald Trump sort of stole her thunder and got the attention off of her. I don't know if it was intentional, but he stepped in and talked religious freedom and religious persecution, and all the focus went on him and off of her. Now, I have no idea the politics behind that, but it was refreshing to see that focus go off the lies and onto the truth and the concern of Christian persecution and religious freedom, which he then spoke at, I think, at about the same time she was giving her. So my only point is, I think that as the fact that there's a one world religion rising, we can look at the Catholic Church and how Pope Francis plays into that, the prominence of Pope Francis, the strangeness of Pope. There's never been, he's charismatic, but he calls fundamentalist Christians a scourge on our time. What kind of a pope says things like that? Don't you want to get along with all religions? That's what he wants to do, except us. He doesn't want to get along with us. So keep your eye on the rise of the new world, one world religion, and how environmentalism, because to have a new world order, you need a crisis. The ultimate crisis will be the rapture. But before the rapture, I believe it will be the world is going to go up in smoke in 10 years if we don't get our environmental program together. So that's going to be the crisis. So just keep your eye on that. It's going to form into, the church will be gone. The church will be gone. It will form into the one world religion. Okay, number 4, these are the primary things to keep your eyes on. Again, I've already referred to this, the rise of wickedness. I could get so many examples, and I actually do in the message that I'm giving at Proximity, and then we'll talk about this a little bit more on Wednesday night. But again, this rise of wickedness, they just built the world's largest Ouija board in Salem, Massachusetts. Who cares? It was like many football fields long, the world's largest Ouija board. So what? Well, people were excited about it. Pictures of it. I even did a little radio segment on it, along with other things that are going on that we need to watch because they're tide of our times type thing. Okay, 5, the mocking and scoffing. Again, not just of eschatology, but the mocking and scoffing of, who was it? One of these hosts, I've got a picture of him in my other PowerPoint, saying, if you actually believe there was a Noah's Ark, I think you must be a Trump voter if you believe there's a Noah's Ark. It was Jake Tapper or one of those guys. Chuck Todd, thank you. Chuck Todd said that a couple weeks ago, the mocking. Joy Behar saying, well, Mike Pence hears the word of the Lord. Am I still okay? I just bumped. Okay. Mike Pence hears the word of the Lord. Isn't that mental illness? He's hearing voices. Joy Behar says over national television. He's hearing voices. That's mental illness. That's mocking is what it is. Expect it. And it's growing intensity, and it's one of the signs of the times, and I think in the last year or two, this has gone way, way out of control, and it's going to get even worse. That means it's going to get worse in your world, too. So when you tell the truth to folks, you're going to be mocked and scoffed. I referred to that earlier. This is a part of it that I think are 10 top primary signs of the times. Hatred of Jews and Christians. Look, I saw an intriguing headline. I captured it. It said, I think it was a Gatestone Institute, and I can show it at some time here, not today, but it said, soon there will be no Jews left in Europe. No Jews left in Europe. Well, hooray, they're all going back to Israel, which is what God wants. But the method of getting them back to Israel is the same method that's going on in New York and other places. Rabid anti-Semitism. They're not safe. You certainly can't be outwardly identified as a Jew. Certainly you can't wear the yarmulke, can't even wear a Star of David, really. Or you're inviting yourself being terribly beaten up, killed. All over Europe. Now it's creeping into America. And just as bad going on with Christians, particularly in Middle East, parts of Africa. As Gatestone Institute said, looking back 2019, persecution of Christians, the death of Christians, too many to count, paying with their lives for their faith. And yet we sit here comfortably this morning in a nice warm auditorium, and we don't have too much to fear yet. So I think this is one of the top 10 signs of the last year or two, going on into the new year, that we should keep our eyes on. Middle East madness and drama. We've certainly had it here in the last week. And I think the key of the last week, when you look at Iran and you look at what's happened and the ongoing conflict, the key is the Iranians are Shiite Muslims, and they are waiting for their Mahdi, the 12th Imam, or the Mahdi. And for the Mahdi to come back, that's their Messiah. The Mahdi must come back when there's conflict. So the fact that President Trump has kind of put the lid on Iran getting a nuclear bomb, that is just what Iran wants. That's just what that JCPOA was going to allow them to have, a nuclear bomb in just a few years. That, again, that goes back to that mindset, that strong delusion that we can trust the Iranians with a nuclear bomb. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Trump pulled the plug on that, and they were going to violate it anyway, and now they're moving ahead violating it anyway. And yet all of Europe who went along with it, most of the left here going along with it, blinded, cannot see the obvious. So they want that nuclear bomb. They'll drop it on somebody, certainly during the tribulation. I don't know about before. You never know. But in their mind, chaos will bring on their Mahdi, their 12th Imam. So when you see the kind of chaos that's gone on this past week, they love it. The Iranians just love it because that's paving the way for Mr. 12th Imam. Okay, number 8 is the global government efforts, the effort at creating a one world system. And I think 3 people are prominent, and they're standing in the way. One is obvious, President Trump. He's a nationalist, not a globalist. 2 is Benjamin Netanyahu. He's a nationalist, not a globalist. And now we have Boris Johnson of the UK. He's a nationalist. He does not want to be a part of the EU. So we got 3 troublemakers coming along saying, stop this one-worldism. We don't care about, as President Trump says, I'm interested, I have to look out for Pittsburgh, not Paris. And that's kind of the mentality of those 3 men, is that they want to look out for their neighborhood. Israel, UK, America. The globalists are furious. Why do you think they hate Donald Trump? Why do you think they're trying to throw Trump out of office? They're trying to throw Netanyahu out of office. It's because those 2 men particularly are standing in the way of a coming system. It's called globalism, and they're in the way. They won't cooperate. Now, will their successors cooperate? Possibly. We don't know who their successors are going to be. So I just think if you can see it from a broader perspective, it will make more sense to you. The apostasy, the Laodicea lurch to the left in the church. Again, what's going on in today's church is certainly one of the top 10 issues of the last year and previous year and this coming year. And I think the thing that I'm going to show some clips at proximity of what's called the New Apostolic Reformation. They trouble me more than almost anyone. And an illustration of that would be Bill Johnson's Bethel Church in Reading. They just, in the last month, tried to raise the dead, raise a little 2-year-old girl who died, and they spent a week. It was very sad. They showed it online. The little girl's name was Olive. They were calling Olive come forth from the grave. She was actually in the morgue, but Olive come forth. They were expecting her to sit up and start walking, I guess. I mean, it was tragic. And it was the parents' idea that we raise this little girl from the dead. But this is what the NAR is doing all over the world. It's the fastest growing denomination in the world, in the church around the world, fastest growing. And I think it's the most dangerous. And it's all a focus on signs and miracles and things that, anything but the Bible. We don't really open the Bible and teach. We look at signs, wonders, miracles. We try to raise the dead, things like this. So I'm just saying, things like that. Oh, there's so much more. Some of the things going on at Southern Baptist Convention really, I've done radio on it, on critical race theory, Southern Baptist Convention, focusing on that now. Since when? What has that got to do with the gospel? Critical race theory? Social justice, racing through our evangelical churches. National Association of Evangelicals, this is a few years ago now, came out and said, this is NAE. Okay, I'm old enough to remember when the NAE wouldn't have even thought like this. America can't have any nukes. No nukes for America. This is evangelical talk. Why aren't we just talking about winning souls? No, we're talking about no nukes. So, again, the church is in the phase of Laodicea. It's lurching left. Again, we're left with a remnant believers here, because the church is getting out of control with apostasy, and that's just going nowhere but skyrocketing up, I guarantee you. And then lastly would be the surveillance society going on. And I just taped 2 programs, radio programs, with Billy Crone, Pastor Billy Crone, on the surveillance society. And then gentleman you've had here, Eric Barger, is focusing on that as well. And I promise you, everything you do, they know. Your phone is listening to everything you say. You have no privacy. You think this GPS up in the sky is your friend. You're preventing you from getting lost. Well, that's fine, but they know everywhere you are. imagine this in the hands of the Antichrist. That's the point. It's preparing the way for the Antichrist. Antichrist system, it's coming. It's really here. It's just going to be fine-tuned when he gets here. So, remnant believers, they understand these signs of the times. They warn about them, Ezekiel 33:6. They are put down for sounding the warning. But we must not be silent. Please don't be silent. And some of you I've met, and you say you're getting good teaching, either in church, this church, online, whatever. That's great, just as long as you're getting some kind of solid input that's so light years away from the apostasy that's going on in 90% of our churches, to be honest. I do post headlines. I post articles 6 days a week at olivetreeviews.org. And I want to invite you to Understanding the Times 2020 in Minneapolis. And that's September 26th and 27th. It's still warm then. It's not snowing yet. September 26th, 27th, and that's in the suburb of Minneapolis. And Amir Sarfati, Pastor Jack Hibbs, Pastor Barry Stagner, Joel Rosenberg, and Michelle Bachman. And we pack it out. We have about 4,300 or so in attendance. We do live stream it at no cost. If you just look at my website, it'll direct you if you'd like to watch. And I think we've had about 300,000 watch, 300,000 to 400,000 watch 2019, which was last fall. So I invite you to do that. And then if you'd like to tune in, if you can't tune in to, and I put your pastor's picture up there just to embarrass him, so that's for radio, and that's about 900 stations. The easy way is watch it on our YouTube channel, Olive Tree Ministries, and we're on lots of networks out here. I know we're on CSN and some other stations here in California. I'm not even sure all of them, but Sirius Satellite, I know that, CSN, and I think we're on a BOT station here in California as well. So what I want to do is I want to close with this one picture, and I try to close most of my messages with it. And if you take a look, it's a little baby lion just born, scared to death. He says, I thought about quitting. Then I noticed who was watching. The Lion of Judah is watching. The Lion of Judah is watching you. So you can't quit either. You can't. You can't be quiet. If you're quiet, how will they know? If you get discouraged and clam up, how are they going to hear? The Lion of Judah is watching. Amen? I want to thank you for inviting me, Pastor Brandon. It's all yours.